As well as having an insatiable appetite for shedding blood, Joe Goldberg loves rare books and classic literature, and using his skills, Joe manages to get himself a job at the local library as a bookkeeper. This helps him utilize the skills he got from Mr. Mooney at the bookstore in New York as a teenager, and the love for literature continues in Season 3. However, what most fans of the show might not have picked up on is that the majority of literary references and books throughout the third season foreshadow the tragedies to come. So, what do the books in You Season 3 actually mean? Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. Joe reads The Great Gatsby to his son Henry in the first episode, and in the process, Henry throws up all over a page. As Henry continues vomiting, Joe starts reflecting on the lack of connection between him and his son and blames it on the past. Joe feels that the more he tries to bond with his son, the more Henry cries, and he thinks that Henry knows they don't have a connection. In the classic novel by Fitzgerald, Gatsby, a fabulously wealthy young man who is the title character and protagonist of the novel, becomes fixated with the green light at the end of his dock, believing it to be a sign from Daisy Buchanan, a beautiful young woman and the object of Gatsby's love. From the time the two met during the war, Gatsby held out hope that eventually they would be reunited and he would be able to offer Daisy everything she wishes to have once he has improved his social standing. Everything Gatsby does after the green light is for Daisy, and he becomes desperate when things start to unravel. In You, Joe refers to his neighbor Natalie as the green light at the end of the dock. Just like in Gatsby's fantasy of Daisy, Joe's illusion is soon shattered as love ends up killing her competitor. Apart from the green light reference, there are also other similarities between the Great Gatsby novel and You. Just like Tom Buchanan, Daisy's spouse, frames Gatsby for Myrtle Wilson's death, Joe goes an extra mile to cover up his wife's crimes instead of just allowing her to be accountable for her mistakes. There's also a quote that very much relates to the plot of the show from Fitzgerald. At the end of the novel, the quote reads, "They were careless people, Tom and Daisy, and they retreated back into their money or their vast carelessness or whatever it was that kept them together, and let other people clean up the mess they had made." See how it's close to what Joe and Love are involved in? Well, perhaps for Joe, it's not about money, right? Anyway, let's go to the next one. Tender as the Night by F. Scott Fitzgerald. Tender as the Night is a novel about marriage and infidelity that is also written by Scott Fitzgerald. For those who have watched You will remember that this is the book that Natalie picked for Joe at the library. Like any normal human being, Joe goes on to wonder whether the book is an invitation or a warning foreshadowing their affair that almost happened towards the end of the first episode. But later in the show, Joe cheats on Love with his boss Marianne, and Love embarks on an extramarital affair with Theo, Natalie's stepson. The book Tender as the Night seemed to come to reality through these characters' actions, and it just keeps going with some of the books as we're going to break down. So hang in there because there's more. Peer Gent by Henrik Ibsen. Norwegian playwright and theater director's Peer Gynt is a 5-act play that was published in 1867, and it tackles themes of procrastination and avoidance. Joe decides to steal a copy of Peer Gynt in episode 2 to sell and send money to Ellie, but he's caught later in episode 4 by Marianne after she realizes that the book is missing. Joe decides to return the book, and as he does so, he's thinking of all the ways he and Love could deal with Gil. At this point, they're already holding Gil captive in the basement of the bakery. The dangerous couple's inability to come to a decision together with the devastating news they gave Gil about his son resulted in Gil taking his own life. This is not what they expected, but it happened, and the two decide to look for a way out of this mess. Joe and his wife Love agree to frame Gil for Natalie's death, and they even plant a fake suicide note next to his body in his house. The procrastination and avoidance was a reference lifted right from Henrik Ibsen's Peer Gynt. Wildflowers of New York by Andrew Garn. Wildflowers of New York is a book that encourages readers to take the time to notice the hidden, to seek out and reflect on the overlooked beauty in crowded spaces, and to wonder at the tenacious plants that thrive and prosper in ways and places we might never expect. However, it is not the story but the title of this book that draws us to it. Does the word wildflower remind you of something? If not, don't worry, we got you. To cover up the fact that he's stealing a rare copy of Peer Gynt for Ellie, Joe pretends he wants to take out a book called Wildflowers of New York. While it could be a case of a mere coincidence, the title seems to foreshadow the events of the season finale. Love attempted to poison Joe with wolfsbane, which he almost succeeded had it not been for Joe's characteristic of being one step ahead of everybody he interacts with. Wolfsbane is a wildflower used as cure or weapon against fantastical creatures, werewolves. More Than Two by Eve Rickert and Franklin View. More Than Two, A Practical Guide to Ethical Polyamory is a nonfiction book about consensual, non-monogamous relationships. At the end of episode 7 of You Season 3, Sherry voices her and her husband Carrie's interest in opening their relationship to Love and Joe, with a night full of sex between the four on the cards. The story almost dies by the end of the episode, but in episode 8, Joe starts reading More Than Two after agreeing to open his and Love's relationship with Sherry and Carrie. However, he has no desire to keep the spark alive with Love, but rather hopes it will distract her while he makes designs on Marianne. Literary reference, Lady Macbeth. As Love tries to come up with ways to frame Natalie's husband Matthew as the killer in episode 3 of You, Joe refers to her as Lady Macbeth. Why does he refer to her as Lady Macbeth, and who is this character, though? Well, Lady Macbeth is a leading character in William Shakespeare's tragedy Macbeth. She's the wife of the play's tragic hero Macbeth, and she provokes her husband into committing regicide, after which she becomes Queen of Scotland. Unlike Macbeth, Joe doesn't kill Matthew, but as a fan of You pretty much know the several other instances where Love encourages Joe to kill. In the last act of the Macbeth play, Lady Macbeth dies off stage in an apparent suicide, just like Love's death in the season finale. Although it is Joe that was responsible for her death, he sets the scene to look like a murder-suicide. Literary reference: Richard Yates. During the 4th episode of You, Theo shows up at Joe's house to meet Love, and as Love tries to make him leave, Joe appears looking suspicious as usual. In a bid to cool down the situation after realizing that Joe's body language doesn't seem to welcome him, Theo compliments Joe on their clean-cut lawn and pristine garden. Theo says Joe has a Richard Yates level of attention to detail before he leaves Joe's residence. Now, Richard Yates is an American author whose debut novel, Revolutionary Road, got nominated for the National Book Award in 1961. The novel tells the story of a young couple who moved to the suburbs on the East Coast. Yes, you guessed it right. The story of the couple moving to the East Coast suburbs is similar to Joe and Love's move to Madre Linda. Yates' Revolutionary Road also tackles the troubles of parenting and childhood trauma, and in particular, the character Frank's feelings of failure and guilt. In You, Joe too is racked with guilt about how much he and Love are exposing their son Henry to. From the murders to their constant disagreements due to insecurities, we think Henry's not too young to copy what he's exposed to as children grow up and act according to what they have been used to seeing as normal. Literary reference: The Lottery by Shirley Jackson. In episode 10, Joe's inner voice narrates, Shirley Jackson once said suburbia is where they start to come apart. The Lottery is a short story written by Shirley Jackson that describes a fictional small town which observes an annual rite known as the Lottery, in which a member of the community is selected by chance. The shocking consequence of being selected in the lottery is revealed only at the end, such as a human life being sacrificed at random to purge the town of all that is bad. The community in this fictional town believe that this is necessary to allow for good things to come. The fact that the killing takes place in a small, quiet town emphasizes dark and violent things can happen anywhere, just like in the town of Madre Linda in the series You. The full quote from the Lottery story reads, "I suppose it starts to happen first in the suburbs." And when Brad asked, "What starts to happen?" she said hysterically, "People starting to come apart." In the season finale of You, things start falling apart with Joe ultimately killing his wife Love and burning their white picket fenced house to the ground with Love inside. After the incident, Joe has nothing left to do at Madre Linda, so he waves goodbye to suburbia and leaves for Paris, France, in another bid to start his life all over again. You by Caroline Kepnes. You is also based on books by author Caroline Kepnes. Although the series initially stuck to its source material, the succeeding seasons have had major changes from the original Joe Goldberg books. Caroline Kepnes' anthology of obsession consists of 3 books, namely You, Hidden Bodies, and more recently released You Love Me. All of the 3 You editions center around the covetous Joe Goldberg, whose fleeting obsessions more often than not turn murderous as he attempts to evade detection and capture as a prolific serial killer. In both Caroline's and Netflix's versions of the twist-filled You story, Joe Goldberg is a charming character who commits acts that are often in direct conflict with his nature. This only explains why Joe is a fan favorite in this show, and viewers are always glued just to know what plan he has next. Caroline Kepnes' You novels follow a trend regarding its protagonist's likability, particularly in You Love Me, making the reader privy to every monstrous thought that pops into Joe's head. Netflix's You follows almost the same trend as it attempts to pass Joe's appeal over the course of its 3 seasons, as his character's excessive obsession begins to outweigh the undeniable charisma of lead character Penn Badgley. However, despite both versions of You aligning on their portrayal of Joe Goldberg, Netflix's You, on the other hand, contains some deviations from Caroline Kepnes' source material. The Netflix series has many new characters, settings, and plots designed to keep even the most ardent You fans' attention. One of the major changes Netflix's You series made from the Joe Goldberg books is the suburb of Madre Linda that drives Joe and Love slowly insane. Caroline's book, You Love Me, aims to continue Joe and Love's Los Angeles story in Madre Linda. Love's new bakery, Sherry, and Carrie simply do not exist. The 3rd book of the series instead introduces several divergent characters of its own, with the prime example being Joe's new love interest, Mary Kay, who eventually becomes the catalyst for his murderous rampage in the Pacific Northwest. Wow! What do you think of the book references in You Season 3? Is there any book you think we missed? Let us know about it in the comments section below and its meaning in the show. And remember to subscribe to The Focus for amazing videos all on your favorite shows.